There is nothing either good or bad, but thinking makes it so. That's a line from Hamlet, one of Shakespeare's most famous plays. But Hamlet isn't the first person that comes to mind when I hear this quote. For me, it will always be associated with a little video game project from the mid-2000s called Final Fantasy Versus XIII. Originally part of the Fabula Nova Crystallis universe and directed by famous character designer Tetsuya Nomura, Versus XIII was promised to be the darkest Final Fantasy game yet, a violent and depressing new take on the series and the genre. But unbeknownst to its creators, the reference to Hamlet would end up becoming something of a self-fulfilling prophecy, as the ghost of Versus XIII would wind up haunting its developers, its successor, and its devoted fanbase, driving people to madness even 20 years later. Nowhere is this level of devotion more evident than with Stella Nox Fleuret, the game's original heroine and love interest, who was axed late in development after appearing in 3 trailers. Stella was one of Versus XIII's most beloved characters and greatest losses. But who even was Stella? And why was she cut from the game? And what is it about her that keeps us so invested in her almost 2 decades later? Stella Nox Fleuret was created in 2007 and was first introduced to the public in the final few seconds of a closed-door trailer shown at Jump Festa 2008. In the trailer, Stella and the main male character, who we now know as Noctis, first appear to approach each other out of concern, but then quickly take up a fighting stance. The symbols surrounding Stella are similar to those in the Pulse alphabet from Final Fantasy XIII. Since all 3 planned Fabula Nova Crystallis games had a shared mythology, and Versus XIII centered heavily on the goddess of death, it's possible that this magic would have had something to do with either Etro or with death. Almost immediately after her first appearance, Stella became very popular with fans, and many predicted that the 2 characters would have a star-crossed lovers romance, a la Romeo and Juliet. In August 2008, Nomura did a series of interviews with Japanese gaming outlets Dengeki and Famitsu, sharing more information about the game. These interviews included photo spreads that gave a first look at what would become Versus XIII's and Stella's most iconic scene, the treaty signing party where Stella and Prince Noctis meet for the first time. He also shared more details about Stella, who was known as Skirt Girl by fans at the time as her name had not yet been released. In his interview with Famitsu, Nomura said, "Surprisingly, she is a rather shy person." In response to a comment about Noctis looking like somebody who goes to a high-class pub, Famitsu asked Nomura if the main female character would be the one making such a comment to him, to which he responded, "She is a very polite girl. She will not say those things to someone who she's met for the first time. To express this characteristic, the way she speaks will have some prominent traits." Speaking to Dengeki, Nomura confirmed that Skirt Girl was in fact the main female protagonist, adding, "If people have seen my work before, they will know that there is few descriptions on the female characters. She is the first female character that will stand out from all previous Final Fantasies." He also said he couldn't comment in detail on whether Stella would be an antagonist or on the enemy side, adding, "She is a very ladylike character, not the humble type, more of a character that moves according to her beliefs." In April 2009, on the bonus disc of Advent Children Complete, the full party scene was released, and we got the full look at Stella's most iconic outfit, her white cocktail dress and white ankle boots, which were designed by Hiromu Takahara, creative director of Rowan. In the scene, Noctis meets Stella alone on the 2nd floor of the building, admiring a painting of the goddess Etro held aloft by the statue of a giant Shinigami. Stella asks Noctis if he also saw the light, which appeared suddenly during the party. Both Noctis and Stella have been able to see this light since they were children, after each of them had a near-death experience. Stella explains that according to Tenebraean legend, the light they just witnessed was the light of expiring souls, and that it bestows upon those who witness it a great power, which Noctis dismisses as a fairy tale. However, he does warn Stella not to tell anybody that she can see this light, as being different from others will cause problems for them both. Before leaving, Stella tells Noctis that she feels that the light did grant her a special power tonight, the ability to meet him. She invites him to visit her in Tenebrae, and Noctis promises to think about it, asking her to call him just Noct. We learn a lot of new information about Stella and her relationship with Noctis here. Noctis and Stella are visually set apart as complementing opposites through their dialogue, their body language, and even their clothing. Noctis is uncomfortable talking about the light, and encourages Stella to hide the fact that she can see it. Even as he admits that he can see the light, and even talks to it, he still dismisses it as a fairy tale, and wants to know nothing about it. Meanwhile, Stella is quite comfortable talking about the light in public, openly asking Noctis what he thinks it could be. Noctis and Stella start their conversation with Stella trailing behind a seemingly uninterested Noctis. By the end of their conversation though, Noctis is the one trailing behind and actively engaging with Stella, even asking her to drop the honorifics and just call him Noct. As interesting as this scene is, it would unfortunately be the last major news we would receive about Stella until 2013, and that would be the year that everything started to go wrong for Stella Nox Fleuret. At E3 2013, Square Enix announced that Versus XIII was now the new mainline Final Fantasy entry, and would be renamed Final Fantasy XV, with Type 0 and Crisis Core director Hajime Tabata joining Nomura as co-director. We don't see too much of Stella in this announcement trailer. There is a short scene of her as a child and a close-up shot of her face at the end. But this is a slightly different face than the one we'd previously seen in 2009 and 2011. In an interview with French gaming outlet Finaland.com, Nomura said that there was no real reason behind the design change except to make Stella look prettier. There is no specific reason behind it, but we didn't want to make her look younger. We just wanted to make her look a little bit prettier. That's all. When I created Stella back in 2007, I actually created something that is not my type of character, but obviously time has passed since then, about 6 years now. And then she actually became something that I quite like now. At the time of the announcement, Nomura seemed confident and hopeful about the future of the project, reassuring fans that the story would stay the same, and even hinting at potential sequels. But, as we know, this was not to be, and neither was Stella, as her brief E3 appearance would also be her last. In 2014, it was officially announced that Nomura had stepped down as Final Fantasy XV's director, something he claimed was a company decision. This left Hajime Tabata as the project's sole director, and for a variety of reasons, his vision of Final Fantasy XV was drastically different. We heard nothing more about Stella until February 2015, when Tabata told JP Games that he could not reveal anything about her yet. 4 months later, we would discover why. On June 4th, 2015, Stella was officially scrapped from Final Fantasy XV. Explaining the decision during the Active Time report, Tabata said, "The team wanted to keep her as a heroine and pursued ways to tie her into Final Fantasy XV's design, but we found it difficult to make sense of her character and role within the new game." After a lot of consideration, the team decided not to include Stella and go with a new heroine named Luna, who has a different role in the story. But while Stella may have been cut from the game, she lived on in the hearts of the very passionate and increasingly irritated fans who were growing concerned about the new direction of Final Fantasy XV. And nowhere was Stella more alive than in the mind of Hajime Tabata himself. In August 2015, Square Enix attended Gamescom in Germany to announce the release of the new Dawn trailer, which included a short clip of a blonde little girl we would come to know as Lunafreya Nox Fleuret. Speaking to German gaming website Spieletester, Tabata said, "The woman in the trailer is not Stella. She may have some similarities. We felt we needed another female character in the game. We wanted a different female character. So it was a very simple decision because we just felt like we had a better fitting character." At the same event, Tabata told GameInformer.com that Lunafreya is a stronger character than Luna.
I meant Stella. My brain is so fried, I'm sorry guys.
Luna is one of Noctis' childhood friends, and while she may look similar to Stella, Tabata insists that she's got a stronger personality. She's a much stronger, more determined character, Tabata says. She's got her own willpower and objectives that she acts upon. And when talking to JewelShockers.com, he implied that Stella was a passive and weak character. Within the overall theme of the journey, the team reasoned on what position a heroine should take, and thought that rather than having a more passive and weak heroine that needs to be saved, it would be much better to have a stronger and more determined female character who actively engages with the events in the story, and to play that role, they thought they needed a different character than Stella. That's why they decided on Luna. That is a character that can fulfill that role. Luna will be presented as a very strong-willed character. Tabata-san thinks that the people who disagreed with the changes of heroines and have been critical of the removal of Stella maybe will change their opinion when they'll see more of Luna, how she appears in the story, and what kind of character she is. A similar description appeared in an officially licensed Final Fantasy XV book that was distributed as promotional material before the game released in late 2016. Unlike the original heroine in Final Fantasy XV, Stella Nox Fleuret, since removed, Lunafreya is a strong, independent, determined character, well able to hold her own with the armed guards pointing their weapons at her. I'm not trying to kick the fragile hornet's nest that is the Stella versus Lunafreya debate, but I do think it's worth noting just how often Tabata and Square Enix were the ones instigating those arguments by portraying Stella, a character the public never got to meet, as less independent, less strong, and less interesting than Lunafreya, without actually showing or telling us why. Because when Final Fantasy XV did come out, well, let's just say people weren't too impressed by Lunafreya either. As the dust began to settle on Versus XIII's legacy, one burning question still remained. Who was Stella Nox Fleuret supposed to be? There's a couple of ideas about that. One particularly prominent one is that Stella is just a prototype Lunafreya. This largely stems from the physical similarities between 2013 Stella and Final Fantasy XV Luna. This version of Stella looks much more similar to Lunafreya than to either of her previous models. Not to mention that Stella and Luna do have a lot in common. They're both love interests. They're both from the royal families of Tenebrae. They both have some relation to the gods and to death. Stella can see the light of expiring souls, and Lunafreya, as the Oracle, can commune with the gods. E3 2013 also showed a younger Stella dragging Noctis by the hand, with a very similar haircut and dress to young Luna. While Nomura's removal was only publicly announced in 2014, Tabata officially became sole director in December 2013, and was likely making changes to the game long before that. All of this combined has convinced certain fans that the Stella from 2007 to 2011 was nothing but a vague concept, and that much of her character had been scrapped or retconned before 2011. This would explain why the 2013 trailer showed Noctis and Stella meeting as children, like Luna and Noctis do in 15, and not at the treaty party as adults. I don't personally believe that this is true. Mostly because Tabata and Square Enix went out of their way to reinforce that Lunafreya and Stella were completely different characters. Stella was removed from 15 allegedly because Tabata's team were so uncomfortable changing so much about an established character. So if Stella had never had a defined character and role in the story, then Lunafreya would never have needed to exist in the first place. And while Tabata likely was making significant changes behind the scenes at that point, Nomura was still the director of the 2013 trailer, and I just don't think that Nomura would have been so confident to publicly announce potential sequels if he didn't genuinely believe at the time that his vision of the game was being left more or less intact. As additional evidence, in June 2016, the now famous 4chan leak, which spoiled pretty much every major plot point in the game several months before its release, said this about Stella and Lunafreya. You're treating Luna and Stella like they're comparable. They aren't. As I've said before, a lot of the shift from Versus 13 to 15 was about maintaining an image to keep fans and hype from Versus 13 going, so they needed a blonde chick to replace Stella, and that's Luna. Luna isn't a slightly rewritten Stella. It's a completely different character. Removing Stella from the game, when she had already become such a beloved character, could not have been an easy decision for Tabata. and I can't see him making a decision that he knew would only have brought him backlash if he was just going to give Lunafreya a similar character arc anyway. Tabata even said as much in an interview with 4Gamer in 2016. As Final Fantasy XV was making revisions to complete the story in one game, it quickly became clear that the heroine's role had to be changed significantly. Speaking to VG247 in 2017, he added, "The role of the heroine for Versus XIII was different than the heroine that we conceived for Final Fantasy XV. But again, because so many players who had seen these trailers were looking forward to playing as this character, if her role in 15 was different, then it would be sort of betraying their expectations, right? So rather than disappoint users by including a Stella that didn't match what they expected, we went with a different character altogether, Luna." So no, by all accounts, Stella and Lunafreya were not the same character. But if Stella wasn't just Lunafreya in a different font, then who was she? In late 2016, shortly after Final Fantasy XV was released, a 4chan user called Ovlushai made a series of posts claiming they had worked on Final Fantasy XV and shared behind-the-scenes information about the game. One of the most famous things this user shared was about the original Versus XIII and the role of Stella. The game centered around death, ghosts, and hallucinations/dreams. Noctis killed the female protagonist before the game started, but he didn't remember. This spread like wildfire across fan communities, largely because people wanted to believe it was true. Many Final Fantasy XV fans had grown tired of hearing people complain about Versus, so the idea that its most popular character would have died even before the game began was a great bit of schadenfreude for many. It also seemed to explain why Tabata was so confident that Lunafreya was a more independent and determined character to Stella when she had received so little screen time and exposition. At least Lunafreya made it to Chapter 9 before being killed off. Personally, I'm not completely sure whether or not this leak is true. On the one hand, much of Ovlushai's information sounds plausible. However, Ovlushai never worked on Versus XIII. They claim they joined the project only after Tabata became sole director, which means much of their information came second-hand from their alleged co-workers. Not to mention that in December 2016, character designer Roberto Ferrari shared some original Versus storyboards from 2013, where Stella can be seen talking on the phone to Noctis and interacting with other characters like Gentiana, contradicting the idea that Stella only appeared as a hallucination of Noctis. There is, of course, a third option. This version of Stella could have existed at some point in the game's development. Ferrari confirmed that the script for Versus underwent extensive rewrites in 2013, and that the original script he'd received in 2011 had been completely changed. Something that was also confirmed by Noctis' Japanese voice actor Tatsuhisa Suzuki. It's possible that this storyline for Stella was created after Ferrari's 2013 mood boards. After all, in the comments of his Facebook post, he mentions that he left the team due to misunderstandings with art director Yusuke Naura about the direction of the game. Another 2016 leak, claiming to have come from a Japanese forum, suggested that Stella was one of the only Versus characters to actually survive the original trilogy, that she would be left in poor health, and that she and her brother Ravis would be manipulated by Arden, with Stella eventually killing Ravis accidentally. This leak has no credible source. In fact, it actually has no source at all. And in one instance, it mentions that the Ring of Lushai never existed in the original script, which is probably not true, because Nomura mentioned Noctis wearing the ring as an important piece of jewellery as far back as 2008. But, on the other hand, the leak does correctly name Noctis' mother as Alia, which was officially confirmed 2 years later in the Final Fantasy XV official works book, and in a massive data mine of the Royal DLC, which uncovered this scrapped audio file.
Quite a son we raised. Eh, Alia?
Fun fact, this data mine also uncovered a line of dialogue belonging to Stella that was still present in the base game of Final Fantasy XV. The Versus plot, as described in the Japanese forum leak, also shares similarities to 2024's Reignatus, directed by Takumi Isobe. In Renatus, both the hero and the heroine have a near-death experience, and that gives them some kind of special power. The hero and heroine were enemies at first, but eventually their interests align and they join forces. There's a gate to another world, similar to Etro's gate, and a character allied to the protagonist turns out to be a traitor. The forum leak claimed that Gladiolus' father would betray King Regis and eventually become a final boss at the end of the first game. This might seem totally random and insignificant on the surface, but Takumi Isobe is a huge fan of Tetsuya Nomura's work and has openly expressed his interest in Versus XIII. In fact, Isobe specifically sought out scenario writer Kazushige Nojima and composer Yoko Shimomura to work on Renatus, stating that if neither Nojima nor Shimomura agreed to join the project, then it would not go ahead. And while Tetsuya Nomura isn't directly involved, he has expressed his admiration for Isobe and agreed to a crossover collaboration between Renatus and The World Ends With You. And if we compare the design of lead character Marin with another famous character related to Versus XIII, well, it's at least worth considering that the Japanese forum leak might not be completely dismissible. But still, this all leaves us with more questions than answers. Was Stella doomed to die, or was she the only character that might have survived? Was she a hallucination, or did she really kill her own brother? We will likely never know the answers to these questions. Or will we?
Say, fellas, did somebody mention the door to darkness?
In 2019, the long-awaited Kingdom Hearts 3 released. With it came the world of Verum Rex, an in-universe video game that clearly references Versus XIII. The in-game trailer for Verum Rex showed a character modelled after Stella, and I do mean that literally, being captured by a giant robot, reaching out a hand to the Noctis insert character named Yuzora. Near the end of the game, Sora enters the final world, a land on the border between sleep and death that acts as a sort of purgatory. The souls in this world cannot cross over because something or someone in the land of the living is keeping them from death. Here, Sora meets a character known as the Nameless Star, who says the following.
So, whose heart are you?
No one's anymore. They took away my name. Everything about me.
No way! They couldn't have taken away your heart!
Only because it pines for another.
Yeah? Someone's coming for you?
I cannot be certain. He's been changed beyond recognition. His heart replaced with another's. But were he to regain his old self again, he would be distressed by my absence. So I choose to wait here, where he can find me.
Oh, hey! If I see him, I'll tell him that you're here. What's his name? Huh?
Our secret.
While many people thought that this might be a reference to Strelitzia, another Kingdom Hearts character, the 2020 Remind DLC confirmed that the person the Nameless Star mentioned was Yuzora.
But wait, that girl, she told me about you. Maybe you are real after all.
Which means that the Nameless Star herself is most likely some version of Stella. With Kingdom Hearts 4 somewhere on the horizon, and a potential Verum Rex standalone game in the works, it looks like we might finally get to see Stella after all. But after almost 20 years, will fans actually be satisfied with the character and the narrative that they get? You see, the thing about Stella Nox Fleuret is that she's no longer just a character. She's a martyr, a symbol of something much bigger than herself. If Final Fantasy Versus XIII is Hamlet, then Stella is its Ophelia. Stella is the symbol for all that could have been. The hope, the excitement, the intrigue that kept fans invested in a game that was never released. Stella isn't just Stella anymore. She's 2 decades worth of alternate realities, theories and speculations. She's the summary of the entire Versus story and the heart of its fanbase. Can any character actually live up to that legacy? And more importantly, will finding out the truth about Stella finally put an end to the decades-long speculation about Versus XIII? And is that even something that fans want to happen? We've spent a large chunk of our lives waiting to meet Stella Nox Fleuret. Will we even like her when we do? There is nothing either good or bad, but thinking makes it so. I guess we're about to find out if that's true.